So back to one of our top stories today. President Trump suing to block a subpoena from House Democrats demanding information related to his finances after House Oversight Committee Chair Elijah Cummings targeted an accounting firm used by the Trump organization. The president's legal team calling the subpoena a declaration of all-out political war. Joining me now is David Bernstein. He is founder of Run for America, and Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media. Thanks to both of you for joining us. David, I'll start with you. What do you think of this? Could it backfire on the Democrats? Does it look like harassment?
Well, look, the Democrats have made very clear when they ran and were elected that one of the things they were going to do was ask for president's tax returns. So this was part of what voters who voted for Democrats and voted them in knew going into that. And I think the reality is this is a basic piece of information which by law the Democrats are allowed to request, and it's been an issue for a long time. I know Republicans like to say this issue was litigated in the campaign, but Democrats do have oversight power, and there are legitimate issues that are at stake here about what's in these tax returns.
Speaking of the issues, this is how Michael Cohen sort of whet the appetite of Democrats in order to get this rolling. Let's listen to that.
Mr. Trump is a cheat. It was my experience that Mr. Trump inflated his total assets when it served his purposes, such as trying to be listed amongst the wealthiest people in Forbes, and deflated his assets to reduce his real estate taxes.
So, Kevin, I assume that that's one of the issues that David's talking about.
Sounds like a typical New York real estate magnate to me. And by the way,
doesn't make it legal.
Not even necessarily,
I agree, but doesn't make it
not
legal.
even necessarily illegal, because if you have tax policy that allows you to take those deductions, that's what you should do for the benefit and welfare of your stockholders.
But he sounds like he's talking about hiding assets.
Cohen was trying to throw his boss under the bus. What did you expect him to? I mean, of course he's doing that. Now, back to the original question that David answered. This is absolutely something that voters are looking at in the Rust Belt and the 30 states that Trump carried. And they're going, guys, you've been at this for 2.5 years. You've got nothing on him. His personal financials, his corporate financials, these are irrelevant to his term as president. You can deal with this criminally if you want to once he's out of office, but it has no place right now. And the only reason the Democrats are doing this is because they've got nothing to run on.
Okay.
The Green New Deal is about it.
David, Congressman Cicilline was on the show earlier, and he was talking about, no, in fact, we do have a lot of things we've done, and he listed them. And I wonder if those things get crowded out, if the rest of America has heard of these things, because, you know, clearly David hasn't heard about them, and maybe a bunch of people out there haven't, because Democrats are so stuck on this idea of pursuing the president. Do you eclipse any good work that's going on?
Well, I think that is a concern. The smart strategy here for Democrats would be to exercise their constitutional oversight responsibility, and there are plenty of things to look into in the Trump administration, and this is one of them, but to also balance that with putting forward things. You know, we had this last week. Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump had a conversation or beginning another dialogue on infrastructure. I do think that's an area where they can work together.
This is what dominates the news cycle. So as long as you do this, people don't hear about that stuff.
I think it would be in Democrats' interest to do the oversight in a slightly less pronounced way, and to do it a little bit more behind the scenes, frankly. And I think it would be better for them to spend more time talking about policy issues.
They can't not do it, though. Nadler and Schiff and Engel and all of the committee chairs, this is what they rode into town on. This is their chance to kind of have the spotlight. They just can't stop themselves. It's impossible. Yeah. All they have to do to try to beat Trump in the next election is not run a socialist, not push the Green New Deal, not investigate Trump up the wazoo, and actually talk about policy options. They're not doing any of those for him.
And you think that if they did that, they would beat Trump?
No, not necessarily. But if you run someone like Biden and you don't do those 4 things, you have a much better chance than doing all of those 4 things and running a socialist.
It frankly is the case for a Democratic nominee who's not currently in the Senate, who doesn't have to or in Congress, who doesn't have to balance those responsibilities at the same time. You heard Mayor Pete this weekend, you know, when he was asked about impeachment, he said, well, I'm not in Congress, so I'm focused on, you know, getting him out of office by being the person who's going to run against him.
Right.
You know, all these people have to take positions on these questions if they're on judiciary, if they're going to be voting on these kind of things, if they're in the House or they're in the Senate.
But it is true that you have to balance. I mean, the Democratic base wants Democrats to go in there and get rid of Trump, do everything you possibly can to get him out of office.
It depends on which base you're talking about. The small, loud left-wing base wants that. The middle of the country Rust Belt base that went with Trump, they don't want that.
Okay, we will see. Gentlemen, thank you so much.